Looking at all these amazing women who are here today, and guys, and we're happy that you are here, you really do have an idea of how relevant Girl Scouting is today. It has changed with the times. It has stayed current, and at the same time stayed true to its core and its values. And I think that is why we have so many people in this room this afternoon. So it is now my great pleasure to introduce, we are so lucky to have this woman here, today's keynote speaker and special guest, Ms. Sylvia Acevedo, Chief Executive Officer of Girl Scouts USA. We have the top dog here. Welcome to Pittsburgh. As a young Girl Scout in New Mexico, Girl Scouting nourished Sylvia's love of math and science and would culminate in a career as a rocket scientist. I mean, when you say, I'm not a rocket scientist, she's a rocket scientist. Engineer and award-winning STEM entrepreneur. Sylvia was one of the first Hispanic students to earn a graduate engineering degree from Stanford, an MS in industrial engineering. She served in executive and engineering roles at leading technology companies such as Apple, Dell Computer Corporation, Autodesk Incorporated, and IBM. Wow. And she began her career as a rocket scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This month marks Sylvia's one-year anniversary as appointed CEO of the Girl Scouts. Please join me in welcoming a remarkable woman.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. Hey. I want to thank you. I've been wanting to come to Pittsburgh for a long time, so I'm so excited to be here. Amazing folks, amazing honorees. Your young women that you're going to hear about, Alexis and Maria, they're just, you should feel so good about the future with these kind of young women in Girl Scouts. I want to thank the leadership of Western Pennsylvania of Girl Scouts. Pat and Lois, thank you very much, and thank you all for making time out of your busy day to be here to support the Girl Scouts. Thank you very much. Now today I was going to talk to you a little bit about why Girl Scouts is so important to me. And then I want to tell you a little bit, you might have heard something about the Boy Scouts. So I'm going to talk about that. But then I'm going to go back and tell you about where we're going and why it matters. Why it matters to girls, why it matters to communities, and why it matters to America. Does that sound okay? All right, about a dozen years ago, I got this phone call. You see, I had this technology career, and one day the phone rang, and it was somebody from the archives department at Stanford. Now, I got to tell you, it's a sobering moment when an archives department calls you. And so they said, you know, you're one of the first females or male Hispanics that have ever gotten their master's in engineering from Stanford. And unfortunately, you're still one of the few. And they wanted to interview me about how that happened. Because they said, you know where you're from in southern New Mexico? At that time when you were growing up, Stanford didn't even recruit from your area. So how was it that you even knew about us? And how was it that you were prepared with the math, the science, to compete at the global elite level? And they said, were your parents college professors? Hardly. Were your parents rich ranchers? Hardly. And so, you know, I grew up literally on a dirt road. I do say that we did eat organic chickens, but that's only because our neighbor grew them and they ran around on the yards, right? So, you know, when they asked that, they kept saying, well, how was it? Because when you were growing up, at that time, girls like you didn't even graduate from high school, much less go on to college, much less become an engineer. And so the more they kept asking me, the more I realized that the moment my life changed, that inflection point, was one day when I was lucky enough to be a Girl Scout. And I had just finished eating s'mores around a campsite, right? And was looking at the stars. And I'd looked at the stars many times. And I just saw them as bright, twinkly lights, right? But my troop leader sat beside me, and she showed me that there were constellations, and there were patterns, and that there was the Big Dipper, and the Little Dipper, and the Orion, and that there were systems out there. And that moment just really ignited my imagination for science. Well, she remembered that because later on we were deciding to earn our badges, and we had our troop there and our different patrols, and we were deciding on what badges we wanted to earn. And so a lot of my friends wanted to earn the cooking badge, and my patrol said we're going to earn our cooking badge. And so my troop leader pulled me aside and she said, how about earning a science badge? And, I looked at her and I said, she goes, how about that? I said, I want to earn a cooking badge like all my friends. I was a girl, right? But she taught me that important trait about women, we can multitask. And so she said, you can do both. And that was so important because, I learned earning my science badge, which I made a rocket, an Estes rocket, and at the same time learning to cook, I learned that you have to read the directions correctly, you have to get the ingredients or the chemicals right, and then you have to get the heat source right. And when you do that, you have success. And at that young age, I remembered I was in 4th grade at the time, it really cemented in my mind that something like cooking, which was seen as very female, was just like science. And I realized that I could do it. So after that, I started taking the math and science classes, and all those electives that girls like me hadn't been taking. But I did because not only did I like it, I realized I was good at it. So when it was time to go on to college, and I signed up, and that college counselor opened up the door and looked at the lobby and looked around me. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm going to college. And she said, girls like you don't go to college. Unfortunately, statistically, she was right, but she wasn't right in my case. And I said, I'm going to college. And then she brought me into her office and she said, well, what are you going to study? I said, I'm going to be an engineer. And she literally laughed. And she said, girls aren't engineers. But with that confidence that only Girl Scouts gives you, I said, I'm going to be an engineer. If I can cook, I can do science, and I'm going to be an engineer. And so one of the great perks about being the Girl Scout CEO is you get your own patch. And if you go to LinkedIn, you'll get to see a video. You go to my site on LinkedIn, my profile, and I've got a patch, and my patch tells the story. So it's got the stars, which are an homage to my troop leaders, the ones that helped me with the stars, and my mom. There's an atom in the nucleus. As you know, what powers an atom is the nucleus, and that's got the Girl Scout trefoil. It's got a rocket ship with a CEO. And it's got also a planet on it. It's not a cookie, it's a planet. And that's because I worked on the Voyager 2 mission that went by Jupiter and its moons Io and Europa. And then because I still am a nerd, it's got my 3 favorite math symbols. Summation, because Girl Scouts really had my love of counting. Pi, because one of the crafts I was making had needed material and it had some rounded edges to it, rounded parts to it. And my mother said, you don't have a pattern. How do you know how much material you need because of the rounded edges? And I said, oh, Mom, that's okay. It's 2 pi r. And my mom said, I'm glad you like math, mija. And then finally is infinity symbol, because Girl Scout unleashes infinite potential. It unleashed my infinite potential. And that is why I have so much passion for Girl Scouts, because it wasn't just me. There are millions of women whose lives were transformed because of Girl Scouts. And every day that drives me. And it's not just their lives that were transformed, there were communities, our nation was transformed. They had mentioned earlier, 2/3 of our US senators, all of our secretaries of state, almost every female that's been in space, she's an astronaut. 80% of Silicon Valley leaders, they were Girl Scouts. It's just really amazing, our impact. Half of America's business leaders, Girl Scouts. We're running the banks, we're running the largest institutions. Girl Scouts are. And so what we do matters to our businesses, matters to our workforce, matters to our communities, matters to our families. And so now we'll talk a little bit about that other thing. So I want you all to know we are keeping the girl in Girl Scouts. We are committed, not only because it's our congressional charter and it's where we were constituted, we are only focused on girls. We are girl experts, our programming, all of that. We know the benefits of that girl-only space, our girl-only program. That's what gives the girls the chance to try non-traditional things, to really develop the potential that she has. So I know that other organization is now, they're keeping their name as an organization, Boy Scouts of America, but they're dropping the boy in Scouts, so there'll only be Scouts BSA. So, when we look at what's happening in the world, all of our youth need more services. So for us, for them to take their focus off adding more services to boys and focusing on girls, it's like, what's up with that? But we do know, and the engineer in me and also the nonprofit executive now also wonders, in their plan, they say they're going to do separate but equal. They're still going to have completely single sex. In youth services, the hardest person to get is not the youth. The hardest person to get is the volunteer. So their model requires double the number of volunteers. Wow, how are you going to do that? And if they don't do that, then you're going to collapse them, and then you're going to have girls and boys. And then we know that those aren't the ways to get the best outcomes for girls, the proven outcomes for girls. So then the chance of her getting called on, the chance of her getting a chance to do something non-traditional is dramatically diminished. In addition to that, youth safety is paramount. One of the things I'm proudest of is in Girl Scouts, youth safety is not just something that we add on to something. It is in our very fiber of everything that we do. And when you talk to insurance companies, we are the top-rated youth-serving organization for safety. Whenever you get adults and kids together, you have the chance of things happening. But the way that Girl Scouts, our processes, our systems, the way we do our work, we are swift. If anything happens, our insurance companies know we're swift, we're transparent, we cooperate with the authorities, and we make sure that that doesn't happen again. As a result of that, our insurance rating is the top. We know that when parents entrust us, and when their daughters are doing anything from scuba diving, kayaking, rock climbing, horseback riding, robotics, that their daughter is going to be safe with us. And we take that incredibly seriously. And we also take incredibly seriously the way that girls learn. And that's what's enabled us to have these amazing life outcomes. That when girls are in Girl Scouting, their self-esteem goes up. Their confidence that they can make an impact on the world goes up. The fact that they get their school, they tend to have higher levels of education. They're happier in their lives, they tend to earn more money, and they make a better impact on their community. We know that because we know girls. We continue to be the girl expert and focusing on girl programming in the way that they like to learn. So we will continue to thrive and to be solidly keeping the girl in Girl Scouts. And talking about the program, if you know about Girl Scouts, you know we love our outdoors. You probably saw our North Face partnership. We have over 112,000 acres amongst our movement, over 600 miles of hiking trails. We love the great outdoors. I know the outdoors really transformed my life by being able to look at the stars and ignite my curiosity. We also, will continue our focus on life skills and that amazing cookie program. And I know a lot of people think, wow, the cookie program, what does it teach? In addition to science and opening up my mind and teaching me that I could develop my potential in a non-traditional field, the cookie program was transformative in my life. You see, when you live in poverty or near poverty, you don't know how to create opportunity. You really don't. You live paycheck to paycheck. But what the cookie program taught me is that when we went to Girl Scouts and our troop leader told us all the great things we were going to do one year, I stayed behind and I said, I can't participate. And she said, Sylvia, what do you mean? I said, I think I have to quit Girl Scouts. She said, why? You love Girl Scouts. I said, because my family can't afford it. And she leaned back and she laughed. She goes, don't worry, we're going to sell cookies, all right? But you know what she taught me? The program is really, you set goals. Then you break them down into more achievable goals. You create a budget. You learn about customer service. And you learn how to create opportunity. And then she taught me one of the best sales techniques that I've kept to this day. And she said, you never leave the side of a sale until you've heard no 3 times. Now, I'll tell you, the first time that happened, you sell to your family, your friends, people at church. But then I had to, still wanted to make my goal, right? Knowing how to create opportunity, you set that goal. And so I had to talk to people that were strangers. And so I remember going to this neighbor's house, and I knocked on her door, and looking back, I wonder what time of day it was, because all I can remember is she was wearing a pink robe. So I asked her if she wanted to buy Girl Scout cookies, and she said no. And so she expected me to turn around and walk away. And I remember thinking, troop leader Mrs. Provine said, I can't leave until I've heard no 3 times. So I stood there, she looked at me, so I looked around her. I said, is there anybody else there that could buy Girl Scout cookies? She said no. Again, expecting me to leave. And I'm thinking, that's 2 no's. And then I said, is there anybody's day you would make by buying Girl Scout cookies? And she bought a box, I think mostly to get rid of me. But see, that taught me a whole lot, right? It taught me resilience, and later on in corporate life, let me tell you, that was really valuable. A lot of times my bosses would tell me no, and I didn't go away. They didn't know, that famous secret. But so the cookie program, that's what's launched. I can't tell you how many businesswomen I've met that said, I got my start selling cookies. Katie Couric, the newscaster, said, I learned how to do public speaking. Selling Girl Scout cookies took me out of my shell. I was recently speaking to Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg, a billionaire. Her daughter sells Girl Scout cookies. I said, Sheryl, you're a billionaire. What's up with your daughter selling cookies? And she's looked at me, she said, Sylvia, my daughter has to learn how to look at people in the eye, how to ask them for the order, how to have business ethics, how to give good customer service. Those are timeless values. And so we will never get away from that wonderful cookie program. But then our big focus is on STEM. Partly, because I'm an engineer, but actually, you might really resonate to this because I've been following Pittsburgh and your renaissance for quite a while. You realize that all your assets weren't in material. They weren't in steel. Your assets were in people. Your assets were in your amazing institutions that you have. Your assets were in leadership. And you put those together, and you have revitalized this amazing city. You're a finalist for the HQ2 for Amazon. And that's because of the great work that you've done there. But you realize that from the move, no city better represents this. It reflects the change from the industrial age to the age of data than your community. And at Girl Scouts, we recognize that as well. We are moving to, the tools for data have been created, the social media, Apple, all of that's been done. Now it moves into application, into our businesses, transforming the ways that we live, the way we work, the way that we play. And at Girl Scouts, we want to make sure that Girl Scouts are not just the users of technology, but that they're the creators, they're the inventors, they're the designers of our future. And, so you might have noticed, but last year, we introduced 23 new STEM and outdoor badges, 6 space science badges. I had a little bit to do with that. Robotics badges. We've been doing robotics for a long time. We just never had created the badges. And also a civics badge for our daisies. In Girl Scouts, we've taught civics from the very beginning. When Girl Scouts started, women didn't even have the right to vote. And so teaching them about the civic process was integral to the Girl Scout experience and continues to be. You saw that with the flag ceremony. Civics is incredibly important to Girl Scouts. So now from age 5 all the way to 18, we are teaching girls about the importance of civic and patriotism. But in addition to that is technology and making sure that she can code, she can design, she can create, she can analyze. And there was one area that really surprised me, and that was in cybersecurity. Because I've worked in technology, and for me, cybersecurity, those are the guys in Dungeons and Dragons. And when they came to us and said, Palo Alto Networks and Raytheon, they said, we want Girl Scouts to partner with us because we need more technologists, we need more cybersecurity experts. And I thought, wow, are you really serious? Why do you want to do this so much? And they told me this story. How many of you have been to London? Oh, quite a few. So when you go to London, you have to wave because you're going to be on video. And so they said there was this challenge because of facial recognition software could not recognize accurately someone's facial characteristics if they put horizontal or striped lines on their face with something even as simple as lipstick. And that was a known glitch. Well, that was a known glitch until there was a bombing at a concert. And one of the individuals was assigned to that team, and he said, you know, my daughter was at that concert. She was safe. He said, so this glitch is not a glitch. It is really impacting and possibly harming my daughter, my family, my community, and my nation. And within 2 weeks, he had that software fixed. And the executives at Palo Alto Network told me that story because they said it is so important to have people who know how to code, who are patriotic to their country. And they said in the United States, we have a yawning gap in cybersecurity experts. And the only way that we can close that gap is if we reach into the untapped market of girls. And they said there's only one organization that can do that, and that is the Girl Scouts. So I'm so pleased that if you see in the last year, we have 18 new cybersecurity badges. We're going to even have even more. And when people say, at what age do you start, right? And we say we start at 5. So people say, my goodness, how do you teach girls 5 years old to get interested? Well, we work with experts, and they say, well, you have to start teaching at the basics, which is coding. And the great thing about Girl Scouts is we work with the experts, but then we work with our girl experts to make it interesting for girls. So I'm wearing one of the bracelets that we actually use to make it interesting for girls as an example. This is for daisies. Because if you talk to folks who say, okay, I'm going to teach kids about coding, and you say 5 to 6-year-olds, and you bring in a technology expert, they say, okay, all machine language is based on 0 and 1s. It's a binary system. And at that point, you know that 5 and 6-year-old, she's like doing something else, right? And so we take that expertise, and what do? We make it interesting to girls. And so what we did was we put all these beads in green, blue, and yellow, and then we did the alphabet with that code. And then we asked them to first get their initials and put it into a bracelet. The next thing, within minutes, they've done that. What do they want to do? A necklace with their name, right? And then what do they want to do? They want to do word sentences, right? So we know how to inspire and really enlighten their interests and really get them excited about technology. At the older ages, we do things with networking, and by the time they're in high school, they're doing great things about hacking. We have a Gold Award Girl Scout who's doing her Gold Award project in California. She's in the agricultural field. Her Gold Award project is on cybersecurity, and her project specifically is what happens to the sustainability of our food supply when the Internet of Things gets hacked. Holy cow. But we know at Girl Scouts, we can reach those girls in every residential area. One of the other things I'm most proud of is in Girl Scout is our reach into all groups of all heritage types. If you had told me before I started this that there was an organization that reached over 200,000 African American girls and almost 250,000 Latinas, I said, who's that? It's actually the Girl Scouts. African American girls represent 14% of the girl population, and in Girl Scouts it's 12%. So we're almost at parity. But we want to reach girls of all heritage types, rural communities, suburban community, urban communities. And we need to do that because we need it for America. Because what you've discovered in Pittsburgh is it's all about the people, right? It's about people and leadership. And America at this moment in time isn't just competing with other states and competing with other nations. Right now, with the industrial age moving now to the data age, all these systems are being coded and designed. And if we don't have the talent here, it's going to be done overseas, taking those jobs so that they'll never come back. And when you're coding, you're also coding your mores, your cultural biases. We need to have people who are loyal and patriotic to the United States, designing and protecting our electrical grid, our banking systems, and our defense systems. So at Girl Scouts, we know that what we're doing is very much focused on girls of courage, confidence, and character, but it's very much focused on protecting our girls, our American way of life, and really preparing us for the future. So I want to thank you for being here today, because I know that by you being here, you believe in Girl Scouts. And so I'm going to ask you to support Girl Scouts, to speak up in your community. Many people don't know about the benefits of Girl Scouts, our lasting impact on our America, on our communities, our families, and most importantly, our girls. And so I want to thank you for that. You know, I want to close by telling you this story. Recently, I had the privilege of being in Wichita, Kansas, and it was right after an ice storm. They'd canceled school, but the storm had lifted. And when I went there, I thought, well, maybe a lot of people won't show up, not many girls will be there. Well, 120 girls were there, and 40 parents and troop leaders. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. The girls were doing robotics, doing science, doing all sorts of fun activities. And I went and talked to these parents. And the mom said, my husband drove 4 hours, 3.5 hours in an ice storm to be here. And I said to him, sir, Girl Scouts were all about safety, so you didn't have to do that. And he looked at me in a really quiet way, and he said, you don't know a lot about Kansas. He said, our heyday was in World War II. Since that time, we've lost our aerospace jobs. We've lost our blue-collar jobs. There's an opioid epidemic. And he said, so what my daughter is learning at Girl Scouts, teaching her leadership, teaching her about STEM, it's giving her a leg up on life. He said, it's more dangerous for me not to bring her here than it is to face an ice storm. And when I think about that, I think about that man, I think about his family, and I think about our nation. And that is what gets me going. And I think that is what drives all of us. We want the best for our girls. We want the best for our communities. And we want the best for our nation. So I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for being big supporters of Girl Scouts. God bless you. God bless the Girl Scouts. And God bless America. Thank you very much.